Mystic Camp was the girls' camp of the ruling elite of the Texas oligarchs and has been for a very long time. It was the camp for all the Bushes, all the Reagans, all the governors, all the heads of state, all the oil and gas tycoons, all the elites of Texas, and then some from elsewhere. But that is the place. It's been in
Wow.
operation for 100 years. In fact, Laura Bush in 1995, I believe it was quoted as saying, "I don't care what Ivy League college you come from, as long as you came through Mystic Camp." That you had to go through if you wanted to marry into the right families and do whatever in your public sphere as an adult.
I don't know how many listeners have sent me your videos, dude. I'm talking like every week.
That's
You got to hear this. You got to hear this.
that's
And so,
funny.
yeah. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna hear this. Let me check it out. So I did, and I was really astounded by what I heard in a good way, and mostly because it was like the prophetic implications of the things we're going through right now are insane. So tell people a little bit more about yourself, how you decided to become involved in what we're doing.
I'm the founder of Omega Dynamics. Equipping a warrior class of saints for the days ahead is our tagline. And little did I know, as the Lord burdened me for that, that it wouldn't be the days that are ahead, but it's the days that are upon us now. And I do have a background as a sergeant in the Marine Corps Infantry. Did the college thing, have a degree in history and also law enforcement. Ended up doing a short stint with the U.S. Marshals before becoming a police officer. Did that for a hot minute as well too before changing over into fire EMS. So became a paramedic specialist and a firefighter, and was on a tech rescue team. Started doing some stuff internationally with disaster response just because of that varied background, and always ran like one or two little small construction businesses on the side. But it was actually after returning back from Iraq in 2014. I went over there and embedded with the Kurds, the Peshmerga Kurds, to fight ISIS off the Christians because they were being slaughtered over there. So me and another Marine brother went and embedded with the Kurds for a short time over there, and we're just teaching tactics and different stuff like that to repel
Yeah.
ISIS. Uh,
Before you go any further, I wanted to just ask you about that because that's
yeah.
interesting to me. I went to a Kurdish church when I was in Lebanon last
Oh,
year.
awesome.
Yeah, a lot of refugees, I guess, Kurdish refugees are over in Lebanon because it was kind of like a sanctuary for them from getting, slaughtered left and right by the Muslims. So tell me more about that because, dude, the Kurds are an interesting group of people, amazing people. I mean, give you the shirt off their back type people that I met anyway. I mean, I was they honored us like we were supposed to be at these events that we are at. We would show up at these events and they'd be like, "Here, you guys are in the front row," and it's at like a graduation or a wedding, and we're like, "What is going on here? Like, this is crazy. They don't even know us, and they're putting us up here in the front." But tell me just a little bit about that because, dude, that's crazy to me. Like, so you were embedding yourself, were you acting as part of the US government doing this, or you're just embedding yourself into this Kurdish?
No, we were actually totally freelance. It was
Oh wow.
through Steve Quayle, which I'm sure some of your listeners are familiar with, and he had put a call out looking for. This was at that peak, the peak of when all the Christians were being marched out in orange jumpsuits and having their heads sawed off by that whatever Johnny whatever British citizen who is now ISIS.
Hmm.
And they're putting it in cages and lighting them on fires. The Yazidis were being overran. It was just that wholesale slaughter of ISIS sweeping across the Levant area with our weapon systems and our platforms and our cruiser weapons and our up armored vehicles, along with embedded U.S. intelligence operatives, giving them real time intelligence for how to strike these targets. So there's a whole backstory on who ISIS is and what they are. But knowing that, I had already been unbelievably undone in my spirit watching it. Just, I would go to duty, like I said, as a firefighter paramedic at the time, and had like two small construction businesses on the side, and had been a war fighter and done SWAT stuff and blah 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 and all that. And so I'm sitting there watching this going, oh God, you gotta raise up godly men. You got to do something to stand on the gap on behalf of our brothers and sisters. Like I just couldn't handle the wickedness and the
Hmm.
evil and the slaughter of our brothers and sisters. And so I'll try to make it quick. But as I was praying that one day, the Lord said, "Well," that was his only response was, "Well." And I was like, "Oh, no, you can't like not no, not me, God. Like I'm saying raise up somebody else to go over there." And you're gonna see, like, I have a wife and I have three little kids. All my kids were like, they were like two, three, four at the time, like little guys, and it's like I'd been out of the game war fighting for about a decade at that time. I'm like, oh no, God, oh no, you got the wrong guy. And the Lord spoke very clearly into my spirit and said, I've never called those who have nothing to lose. I call those who have everything to lose. I
Dude.
said, go, and will you go? And I just sobbed, dude, like broke down, just sobbing, 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 and was like, I had the impression that it was a one-way trip. Like as I'm hearing this from the Lord, like this is one way, and okay, if that's what you required of me. And so I just kind of fleeced the Lord, not kind of, I did fleece the Lord, which I've only done twice in my life to actually fleece him because it's such a big decision where it's like there can't be any flesh, there can't be any carnality, there
And
can't
when
be
you say
any.
fleece them, you mean like put out the golden fleece, like the story in the Bible? Is that what or not the golden
Yeah,
fleece,
with
but the
Gideon.
fleece
Yeah,
with the Gideon?
it's
Yeah, okay,
yeah, where it's like if this is really from you, like okay, you have to affirm it this way. And then it's like,
right,
okay, I still don't trust myself. If this is really from you,
yeah,
God, like you got to
yeah,
affirm it because this is high stakes, high stakes. And so my fleece was if this is truly from you, because I don't trust myself. I never trust myself. I'm a
yeah,
carnal man, right?
yeah,
Like apart
yeah,
from Christ, I have nothing. So I don't trust my thoughts, my intents, my internal monologue, anything. So it's like, if it's from the Lord, I'm going to test it and test it and test it and test it and pray through it because we have bents and we have
absolutely,
biases or we have wounds or we have whatever that we operate out of, and we can convince ourselves and self-justify that it's the Lord, and all the while it was just our carnality, pretty common.
absolutely, man, absolutely. And
So
I can totally just I'll let you keep going here. We'll talk.
yeah,
I don't want to take you on forever. I could probably talk to you for hours. I got another interview like directly after this, but I can totally relate to what you're talking about, dude. Like I wrote
yeah,
my last will and testament before I went to Lebanon. I have 5 children, everything to lose as well, and I'm asking myself, am I crazy? Am I stupid? What am I doing here? So I get it, man.
yeah.
Totally relate.
Yeah, so the quick fleece, I'll sum it up. The fleece was, then you'll put it on my wife's heart because it's
Hmm.
like it's too costly, and this all happened in a matter of a 24-hour period. And so I come inside and my wife's weeping when I come inside. She didn't know I was wrestling it out with the Lord, and I asked her what's going on. She goes, I don't know. The Lord just really prompted my spirit. I think you're supposed to go to Iraq and protect our brothers and sisters. I was like, oh my goodness.
Mm.
Are you kidding me? And then within the same time frame, Steve Quill had put out on an interview, I believe, with on the Hagman report, saying that there was one Marine looking for anybody else who is willing to fly with them over to Iraq to protect our brothers and sisters. So again, it was like boom, 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 boom in a
Hmm.
24-hour period. So
Wow.
within about 10 days of that whole experience, I'm in Iraq with only one other guy answered the call. I mean, it was my brother Jeremiah and then myself. So the two of us were the only ones that showed up, and were buying AKs out of the trunk of a car in the middle of Erbil, Iraq, going, where are the Christians at? Like point us towards where the Christians are at and where the front lines of the Peshmerga. And so
Mm.
this whole really powerful thing transpired. I won't break into it, but it transpired over the next couple weeks. We were over there for several weeks, and God did things we could have never have thought or conceived of. And so basically on returning from that, I knew that nothing could be the same. Like this life isn't about a pension and about paying down the house and putting an addition on the house or doing whatever. Like there is no time. The hour is late, and to spend the rest of my life trying to get mine because that's what the American, effeminate culture tells us. American church, effeminate church culture tells us to be a godly man means to be a high income earner and take your kids to 15 different sporting events every weekend. And when I came back, I just categorically reject the entire lie of the American paradigm, liquidated our reality, and said, Lord, we're available to follow you wherever you lead. And I mean, we liquidated everything, got rid of everything. Like, as long as you're in debt, you're not available. As long as you have a house, you're not available. As long as you have whatever, you're not available. As long as you think it's dependent on your job to provide you health care rather than the Lord, you're not available, right? Like, all these different paradigm shuttering things started occurring, and we ended up being missionaries in the Dominican Republic for a couple of years. And on returning from there, the Lord burdened me to write the book Omega Dynamics, equipping a warrior class of Christians for the days ahead. And from there, the Lord just kept directing our steps. We ended up kind of doing a couple little house churches, little church plants, and now we're out in Colorado outside Durango with a church plant out here and a camp. And so I teach and speak and travel and do and train. And then we have a family camp out here in Colorado as well too, in a church that we pastor.
How cool, man. Yeah, me and my family are very much in that process because, like you, when I came back, because we went over there and we were training people how to use tourniquets, chest seals, wound packs, trauma events. I mean, putting on like big, elaborate things and broke down buildings near Tyre where, things are getting bombed, like we're having Israel bomb drones going off. And it was crazy, right? I come
Yeah.
back to America in the same, almost word for word how you said it. I'm just like, this none of this stuff matters. This is all a charade. This is all a matrix. Like we've got to do something. So we're in the process too of like trying to figure out how can we kind of liquidate everything, get everything down to there. We want to go travel to different countries and help out different places. So dude, I totally relate with that. It's really cool to hear another person that had that experience when doing that. I mean, I have other friends that it's the same thing. When you go and you see what kind of experiences your Christian brothers are having overseas, and you see that I mean, we really are living on vacation here. It's almost like
It
it's
it really is. Yeah, it's and that's why, there's people that can take issue with the way that I preach or speak or whatever, because I'm kind of forceful. I have a little bit of a strong personality, and and they're like, you say things so dogmatically. And I'm like, and I'm like, let me process that. Like, is there any flesh in there that I need to work out? Am I lacking in humility and stuff like that? So I really test it when I hear things like that, because I want to honor the Lord with my whole life, and I work through it, and the Lord's like, no, when I work through it with the Lord, he's like, no, it's authority. Like, I've allowed you to see and touch and taste and experience things that's not necessarily the normal. And so when you speak, you are speaking with authority. It's not as an armchair quarterback, because I watched 25 other people on YouTube talk about it, and now I got my little soapbox to stand on. It's like, no, I've lived it.
Mhm.
I've been in a pastoral family that's all seeker friendly churches. I got a peek behind the veil. I was a part of a mission organization, super influential all around the world, and was responsible for hosting short-term missions teams. I got a sampling of the church from every denomination, from every age group, from every background, from every theological background, from every doctrinal background. For multiple years, every single week, I got a new church. The Lord allowed me to get my finger on the pulse of the spirit of the age, of the church, of the apostasy, of the whatever. Then I've been operated in some counter trafficking stuff, and it's like, okay, I got to peek behind that veil. Obviously my military background, and being in law enforcement and elsewhere, I got to peek behind a veil on the greater geopolitical, geostrategic level of things. So it's like the Lord has allowed me these little, like, all these different strange things in my life that don't seem to connect or intersect on any way, like all these strange professions and things that the Lord's allowed me to, even like going on expedition with Tim Alberino, which was a huge blessing that he invited me to be a part of this long-term expeditionary thing in Peru. And it's like, so then you get the antiquity, antediluvian, the Genesis 6 stuff, like deep dive on that. And then it's like deep dive over here, deep dive over here. And anyways, all that to say is the Lord has, by grace, just taken me by the hand and led me through all these different things to be able to speak to them, not with a bent or a bias or sensationalism or hyperbole, but actually to go like, no, this actually is. It's not just hearsay. Like, now even as recently as, I won't get into great detail about it, but I'm I'm slotted to be flying down to a particular base here shortly to be meeting with some guys that are getting ready to brief the White House on the UAP stuff. And I'm like, and they've shown things and told things and revealed things. They're part of a particular task force raised up within federal law enforcement. I wouldn't even tell the agency, but they said, but we want the biblical worldview. We don't want to go in there unarmed. Like we have, all the grushes and all the whatever and all the whatever and all the whatever and all the like all the whistleblower stuff. And then they have the different programs that they can't talk about. They're like, we have this component of it, but we don't have the biblical worldview. Here, we'll tell you what we have. You tell us what you know from the word, so then we can go in armed with all the information when we go brief the White House here in a couple of weeks. And so it's like, even on those levels, it's like, oh my goodness, Lord, like, why me? Like, I'm a chief among all scrubs, but he, for some reason, keeps letting me get these little peeks behind the veil, like the Wizard of Oz, to know and understand what's going on. So then as I'm pulling these things together, are speaking of things, even about the spirit of the age or the lateness of the hour or whatever. It's like, dude, it's believe me, it's not sensationalism. I don't monetize anything. Like I don't blah blah blah. Like I don't take offerings. I don't even pass a plate in our own church. I've never taken an offering in my entire life. Like I just don't like. There's no personal gain. There's no monetization. There's no whatever. It's like I don't know why the Lord just lets me get a peek behind the veil. And so then when I speak to these things, people are easy to be dismissive of it or to go, oh, it's a clickbait or it's a whatever, it's a whatever, it's whatever. Or who's this guy? Who does he think he is? He's so arrogant. And it's like, no, dude, listen, I don't say it with any joy. This is just what it is. And it's not a tertiary concept. Like I have laid hands to these things and actively walked in them and seen them with my own eyes. This is primary source information about the lateness of the hour when you start connecting all these dots. So I just have had a very strange life, but God's been very faithful all along the way.
Yeah, man, I can relate with like because when I first started doing this, I feel like I've been super, like, I would say probably overly aggressive and arrogant in presenting things in the past for sure. And I try not to do that
Me
now, but
too. Absolutely. Me too.
sometimes when you get rolling, it's just like you feel like, okay, the spirit's rolling. I got to just say what's on my mind, and you say things, and sometimes you're like, you listen back and I'm like, man, I was like really harsh with that. But ultimately I think that you know, the reason that I want to do shows like this too is to be able to show that like brothers and sisters can connect on things even if we don't agree, because there's things that me and you don't agree about, and there's
Sure.
100% sure, because I've listened to enough to know that me and you would not see eye to eye on many subjects. But I also see that the Spirit of God is using you, and I see that the fruits of the Spirit abide in some of your stuff that you teach. And I want to give a shout out to Raquel and Sherry. You may not know who they are. I'm not going to give their last names, but they're one of the people that really, kept pushing your content towards me. And so I know a lot of people are very turned off by myself, and I know a lot of people are probably very turned off by you, but it ultimately in the end, it's like they still listen for some reason or another. So it's crazy the way that
Well,
works.
and I think, like you said, it is that youthful zeal. I know, and this is everybody. This is why I never like mercy triumphs judgment, right? So we grow and we mature in these things, and our flesh gets reduced, and there's more space for the power of Holy Spirit to work in our lives, and we grow in understanding loving kindness and patience in these things. But I know, like for anybody, when they first like break into this information space, we'll call it, right? Like the being red pilled, or I say white pilled, right?
Yeah.
Because it's with the gospel that we see these things. That there's this zeal that's like everybody's got to know, right? And you're like,
Oh
dude, you're
yeah.
being deceived, and dude, you're being deceived, and you got to know, and you got to know, and you got to know, and you got to know. And so it's good, right? It's zeal, but there's a proverb that says, "Zeal without knowledge is folly." And then as we grow, we learn how to temper that zeal with the Holy Spirit.
Hmm.
And it's not about Gnosticism to like shake people awake, but it's in love
Yeah.
to rightly and love because we love their standing before a holy God to share these things with people. And so the words may be the exact same, but the posture shifts
Yeah.
because the posture initially is like, you got to know, you got to know, you got to know. And if you don't know, you're going to be deceived or you're in folly or you're of the world or you're
Yeah.
carnal, whatever. Like, right. It's
It's like
zeal,
the
but
shake warning. It's like if somebody's jumping off a cliff, you're like, no, dude, you're gonna die. Don't
yeah.
do it. It's
And it
I
does.
get
And it
that.
takes,
Yeah. Yeah.
it takes about 7, 10 years
Yeah.
of being immersed in this information to have it be tempered to know how to actually rightly apply it, right? Like, and that's why it says a man takes pleasure in airing his own opinion, but takes no delight in understanding. And it's like, I don't want to have an opinion. I want to be able to come forward in love and actually value people standing before a holy God. So now as we grow and mature and those things get tempered, that youthful zeal gets tempered with a little bit more wisdom or a little bit more patience or kindness, like the fruits of the spirit start growing up, less of us, more conformed to the image of Christ. Then hopefully the information is more palatable because our spirits and our posture are more peaceable, but we're saying the same thing. We can be
Mhm.
communicating the same thing we've always communicated, but the posture starts shifting. And now people are more willing to listen because they can discern, everybody's spirit can discern if you're doing it in love or if you're doing it in condemnation, criticism, or judgmentalism. Everybody can discern that, right? So
That's
it's
true.
just
That's
the
true.
process.
That's true. And some people are meant to hear certain things certain ways, and not everybody can respond to certain types of behavior, but there are people that sometimes I think God just will send them along and send that attitude right at the time that that guy needs to hear that. It's crazy how that works, but we've seen,
Yeah.
like you yourself, we've seen thousands of people professing Christ and coming to Christ because they've heard whatever it is that needed to be heard at that right time, even though it's just through a standard video, but it's like they prayed, they needed to hear something, and then
Yep.
boom, they're there at that time. So it's really cool. So the reason I had you on, and I'm glad we got to discuss that because I think it's really cool to get to know more about people that come on here, man, and not just come on here, just people that I'll probably connect with in the future and would want to work with, on certain things and be able to connect with because I have a passion myself for helping people overseas and stuff. We're going overseas in October for a while, and can't really talk about too much about what that's about right now, but we're doing
Yeah,
we're
you never
doing that.
can. That's
Never can,
that's the
yeah.
thing is nobody really can ever know what you do over there, but
That's
that's
true.
just the way it is.
Yeah, that's true. So what I did want to talk about that I think is really, really interesting me, and this we're kind of late in the game on this, but it'll connect with other subjects tonight. I want to talk about Camp Mystic and about the flooding and about just because there seems to be a massive amount of flooding. And me and you were on a conference call about a film that we're both partaking in, and you were talking about some things that I had never heard anybody say before on this subject. And I'll admit that I'm not very researched in the subject. I don't know anything about Camp Mystic. It sounds mystical and it sounds like that's all I know. It sounds like a mystical camp, and I know a major flood came through there like none that they've ever seen before. But there's other floods happening. Tell me what your theory is on this, dude, because I'd love to hear it.
Yeah, well, on the flooding globally, because it's not unique to just Texas, we just, that's our most intimate experience because of the devastation and the amount of loss of life and how quickly it all happened. But if the listeners are paying attention, this is breaking out globally, every continent, virtually every nation, all at the same time, are having the same severe, like once in a thousand year flooding events. I just this morning I saw another article from, oh man, I don't even know where it was. Another nation where they're like, it was Romania or Spain or something like that. But it's like worst flooding in a thousand years. And then it's like the next day, worst flooding in a thousand years. And it's
Mhm.
breaking out all over the place. And I recently shared it with, which I don't take lightly at all. It's definitely not for anything sensational or clickbaity or anything like that. But the Lord gave me a word that's not all the time. Every once in a while, the Lord will speak to me a word, and I usually will sit on it even for years before I even share it. Because again, like we were saying at the beginning, I don't trust the flesh of men, including my own. And the Lord burdened me to share it. But what He had said is, the time of sorrows is over. The birth pains have begun. The water has broken, and he gave me a very detailed thing about what's going to come next. And basically what God was speaking to me was all, because I was sharing how I couldn't reconcile how everything in 2 Peter 3 is about the fire, right? Like they deliberately forget that the same God who judged the earth with a deluge is coming again to judge it with fire, right? All the elements will melt with wax. And we know that it was water first, and then at the second coming of Christ, all his manner of sovereign justice and judgment come through fire. So I was wrestling with the Lord. This, why is there so much water breaking out? Like, this is insane. I mean, the meteorological world doesn't even have the ability to conceptualize what's happening. They
Hmm.
actually, their modeling isn't working anymore. Even their AI based modeling isn't working anymore. And yeah, we can look at HARP and we can look at CERN and we can look at cloud seeding and geoengineering. We can look at ELF waveforms and their ability to superheat the ionosphere with the different antenna arrays and stuff like that. Like, I'm very well aware of what our capabilities are as a government, but at the end of the day, they're going to be caught in their own devices. It's my God who's sovereign over all these things. Like, his way is in the whirlwind and the storm, right? Like, the mountains shake at the snort of his nostrils. Like, he brings the earth with a deluge, and then he comes again with fire in Isaiah 24 and Isaiah 26 and all these different things. And I couldn't reconcile why he only is ever talking about fire, and then there's all this whole earth is literally being flooded right now for the most part. And the Lord said, that's the water breaking. What precedes the birth pains is the water must break, and then the birth pains begin, which means, what he is really revealing to me is like, this is the final push, and the contractions are only going to increase in intensity and frequency right up until the final big push, when new life and the new heaven and new earth and all comes into culmination. Like, the time of sorrows, that's what we've been dealing with for the last 60 years, but now it's the birth pains. And so Kerrville, Texas, being one of them, which is devastating what's going on down there. But there's also layers to that. And some of this is conjecture. It can't be perfectly vetted unless you're involved. But I do have friends down there that are operating in disaster response, and a lot of SF dudes and guys from the teams and guys from other varying backgrounds that are not ones to mince words, or manipulate data, or manipulate reality. We all operate off of, empirical, objective, investigative processes when we do anything. Like, that's how we're all classically trained. And they're reporting back different stuff from down there as well too. But basically, in short, is Mystic Camp was, which by the Mystic Camp, hello, was the girls' camp of the ruling elite of the Texas oligarchs, and has been for a very long time. It was the camp for all the Bushes, all the Reagans, all the governors, all the heads of state, all the oil and gas tycoons, all the elites of Texas, and then some from elsewhere. But that is the place. It's been in
Wow.
operation for 100 years. It's like the elite of elite, where they send their girls for a summer camp there. In fact, Laura Bush in 1995, I believe it was quoted as saying, "I don't care what Ivy League college you come from, as long as you came through Mystic Camp." So
Wow.
basically affirming, like this is a grooming camp for future, high level elites to be able to operate in particular spheres of geopolitical, geostrategic reality, economics, the power tycoons and the family names. Is as she alluded to, they must have come through Mystic Camp if they're going to be of any value. There's different things surrounding the quote unquote hero camp director that drowned heroically trying to save the girls, on what he was doing and why they were there. There's also been, which I know a lot of guys that have operated in some of these tunnels, tunnel systems that run directly underneath of that connect to different areas. So the the there's all these hard data points, and even their own spoken words from all these different elites that have come through Mystic Camp, women, in particular women, that it was a Freemasonic rainbow girls grooming summer experience thing that you had to go through if you wanted to marry into the right families and do whatever in your public sphere as an adult. So that's what it was centered on. So it's interesting that the Lord wiped that off the map. And I'm not diminishing any loss of life anywhere, anytime whatsoever. Like, not, I can't even fathom the heartbreak that will never go away. It doesn't ever get softened with the loss of a child, or a lot of other people died in these floodings as well too. But there's more going on, and that's why, I think we are talking about, John, in that meeting we were doing for this film project, is, even like the Lord says his way is in the whirlwind and the storm. And so literally every time I see a tornado, I go, what was going on there? what
Hmm.
was going on in that mobile home park, what was going on in that community, what was going on. Like every time the US has met with different international elites behind closed doors to lay out the framework for the dividing of Israel since the 50s, every single time it is one of the most fascinating research, data point collection thing that you can look at. Every single time a major large category hurricane struck the East Coast where they were voting and laying out framework to divide Israel, because the Lord's way is in the whirlwind and the storm. And what
Did
some of the
did was it
meteorological.
Jonathan Kahn that wrote a book about that? Somebody wrote a book about that and documented all that stuff. Am I
Oh,
right in?
I'm not sure. I just remember looking at that like 15 years ago going,
Yeah.
no way, what? So now every time a hurricane hits or a tornado rips through, should do a cursory search on what's going on in that area. And it's like, oh, sure enough, the chief of police was embroiled in a child sex trafficking ring. Oh, sure enough, the blah 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 just broke out. Like, sure, like the Lord is very just. And I don't think people understand the sovereignty of God and the justice of God because of the love of God. And so typically when these different mega events happen, astrocatastrophism based earth science events, most people just chalk it up to just natural processes of the curse and the fall. And I go, oh, no, 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 that's 100% the Lord. Like, think of the New Madrid fault line or the Juan de Fuca plates or the San Andreas fault line or the fault line that literally runs right smack on the Temple Mount. Like, God has, when he formed the earth, he actually pre-put in places where he knew he was going to judge the inhabitants of the earth for particular things because of what they would be doing, because he's all knowing, he's omniscient, and he's omnipresent. Even like Pompeii, Mount Vesuvius erupting, which people are fascinated by because the people are frozen in time, right? And it's like that Mount Vesuvius, at the base of Mount Vesuvius is Pompeii. Pompeii was where the temple, the most venerated temple of Apollo stood. That's why Pompeii was wiped out, because of what they were doing and what they were partaking of. And you can go all around the world, all throughout ancient history, and you can look at the astrocatastrophism along with the earth changes and crustal plate displacement, tectonic plates, volcanism, tsunamis, or whatever. And if you look far enough, you'll realize that there is a reason why that particular spot was judged in the way that it was judged. So now we're at a point in time where biblically it says that so heavy upon the earth is the guilt of its lawlessness that the whole earth is going to stagger like a drunkard and sway like a hot hunt in the wind. And every island and every mountain is going to be moved from its place, right? And the men are going to be perplexed at the roaring of the foam of the seas and the foreboding after these things coming from the heavens and blah, blah, blah. So you see, like biblically, it comes into this convergent zenith where all these things are going to be breaking out. They are actually in real time breaking out in ways that most people won't have a paradigm for, but it's actually all the sovereignty and wisdom and, believe it or not, the mercy and kindness of God to shake not only the earth, but also the heavens and the earth, so that which cannot be shaken will be left standing, so that men might look up and actually cry out to a holy God for the forgiveness of sins through the Lord Jesus Christ. That's the purpose. Now, most are going to shake their fist and refuse to repent, as the book of Revelation tells us in great detail. They know that it's God judging. They don't blame climate change anymore. They don't blame any. They can't blame all the elites with all their little specialty ELF weapons, triggering these things and their HARP antenna arrays. They know that it is God who is doing it. They just refuse to bow their knee to him and repent. So that's what we're getting to right now, John.
So I agree with that. 99% of the time, I think that it is God related, like especially, but when we have, like, let's say the cloud seeding, for instance, and I know you get a lot of flack for saying what you say. I've gotten a lot of flack for saying that too, that these things are judgments of God. People are like, how could you say that? Innocent people are dying. And I get why you would think that, why people would think, okay, that's a horrible thing for Jamie and John to say that this is judgment of God, right? But ultimately, we know that God controls most of these things. But what about specific instances of cloud seeding? I heard that there were reports that cloud seeding companies were hired right there in that area, maybe the day before or day of this event, Where does that play into all of this?
Yeah, 100% it is. And that's why I say I don't diminish that. I think, people want to, they're tribalistic by nature, just humanity is tribal. And so they want to swing one way or the other, and they're like, oh, he's denying that there's geoengineering. It's like, no, I'm not.
Hmm.
Absolutely not. I've spoken about these things for 15 years. Like, I could tell you the patent numbers and the different military applications of these things and their tsunami weapons and their earthquake generated weapons and how the waveforms work and how they're able to actually make these things happen. But like, listen, I'm very well aware of their capabilities. What I'm saying and what I want to make clear is that even that is the justice of the Lord. To the pit that they dig, that they will fall into, they will be ensnared by their own plots and their schemes and their machinations. Even that is a form of judgment. Lawlessness will abound. A lawlessness is a removal of the rules of law, right?
Mhm.
Lawless without the rules of law. And so what is lawless is even the restraint on a man's heart. Just like in the days of Noah, when God's speaking to the divine council, saying, let us go down there and confound their language because nothing would be impossible for them to do. Nothing would be, which means they were literally building a Stargate, a portal to assault the heavenly realms, right? It was built in the Valley of Shinar. If they were building a real tower, they would have picked the highest mountain to start on, right? Like it had nothing to do with a tower. I mean, obviously there was real edifices. This is where Freemasons are born out of. It was from this whole etymology, but the anyways, fast forward, what they're doing here is the same thing. Like nothing is impossible. Like look at what they're doing with the human genome. Japan just released artificial womb images last week of their capability of artificially creating babies outside the womb, and as well as genetically engineered and specifically engineered. We have the whole transhumanism movement, what they're capable of doing with that. They have the ability now to manipulate weather and do whatever they want with weather. They can do things through neurogenic processes to literally create a global hive mind of groupthink based on manipulations through ELF, extremely low frequency waveforms, and all these different, like, nothing would be impossible for them. Yes, off Earth. Yes, inside the Earth. Yes, whatever. Like, yes to all of it. So, yes to the cloud seeding. 100% it was going on in that Kerrville area before that time and elsewhere, along with their ability to steer hurricanes, to super spin tornadic activity, to create volcanism in different places, to slip tectonic plates. All the major players of the world, all of them have this technology. The major players of the world all have the same technology. There's actually competition for whose technology is going to be the most severe, which is why, one of the reasons why no nuclear weapons have crossed each other in the air since we detonated on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, because there's weapons that are way, way beyond. Nuclear weapons are optics for the masses. Okay, that is just straight optics for the masses. Nuclear weapons are, by and large, for lack of a better word, don't take this beyond what I'm trying to communicate. They're obsolete. They're by and large
You're the second
obsolete.
guest I've had in the last 2 weeks that has told me that nukes are a psyop. Basically, they're not even really what we think they are. So I
Oh,
don't know.
no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
well, there you go. Yeah, no, they are. They're a total psyop. And I've said, like, I'm trained in CBRN, like chemical, biological, radiological stuff. Like I was a hazmat tech. I was a rescue technician. My background and career is to go into these areas to do mitigation after the fact. One of my good buddies is was high level night, like the nuclear emergencies agency and all these different agencies. I think I'm quoting that acronym wrong,
Mhm.
but anyways, yeah, nothing is what it seems. The nuclear weapons are optics. So going back, I want to connect this to what your question was about the cloud seeding. Yes, that was open source information that yes, they were seeding in that exact area before this happened. However, what I what I want people to understand is even that is God's justice to allow men to walk out these things. It is still the Lord's sovereignty. That's all I'm ever trying to communicate. It is the Lord's sovereignty. And by the way, they're going to lose control. They're going to lose control, just like the movie Geostorm, right? Like you can go watch the movie. Like they talk about predictive programming. They tell you exactly what they're going to do, and then they do it and then they lose control because you can't control it because it is my God's. It is
Hmm.
not theirs. They may try to counterfeit it, they may try to manipulate it, they may try to whatever it, but ultimately at the end of the day, it's even the sovereignty of the Lord to allow them to do these things. I mean, you look at the book of Job, Satan himself had to request permission to carry out particular things that were afflictions against Job and his household. He had to have permission to do it. There's a scripture that says, can calamity come upon a nation unless the Lord has decreed it? The answer is no. That's a facetious question from the Lord. No. The day is the Lord and the night also. Rain will fall on the righteous and the wicked alike. Like God is sovereign over all these things. So even allowing these men to do CERN, like, and allowing them to manipulate the weather and allowing them to do these horrific things that they do, the global elite and all the deep underground military base activities and all the genetic amalgamations and the horrors that the human heart is capable of, the Lord allows it to let them fill up their cup of iniquity.
Hmm.
And then to show them the error and the folly of their hubris and their arrogance when all these snares that they've laid out for all of humanity come back on their own heads. All of it does. Which is why the global elite, from Oprah to Zuckerberg to everybody else in between, is openly talking about their underground facilities that they're building in mass. And all the elite are building in mass in the ground. And at the same time, Obadiah 1:4, trying to set their nest among the stars to avoid the judgment of God. Just like Revelation 6 says that the generals and the mighty men and the great men and the wealthy men of the earth will hide themselves in the rocks of the earth from the great and terrible day of the Lord. Like they're trying to go inside the earth, they're trying to get off the earth because they know their narrative is failing them and all their wickedness is about ready to come back. All that they've sown, whether it's with the human genome or with the weather or with the perversions against children and everything in between, it's all coming back on their own heads.
I totally agree. The Bible does say that God uses everything, works everything to his end, even the wicked for the day of destruction. But I can't help but think that this is one of those things that's confusion setting, that God put confusion because I don't know who ordered it. I do know I looked up the company who did it, and it was Rainmaker Technology Corporation. And they ordered it on July 2nd, 2025 to replace aquifers and such in the area. And they say that they had nothing to do with the flooding, which I feel like this is, kind of like one of those things. It's hard to see that it didn't at least contribute to it in some way. But I would wonder who ordered that, who was in control of that, because if these elites are sending their kids to this camp, obviously, unless they're wanting to do a mass, sacrifice of their own children or anything like that, there had to be confusion that set in. There had to be some type of like God put this in these people's heart to do this, and it's crazy to think that that was the thing. And when you talk about Camp Mystic, I've got just a few more minutes here, and you talk about the elites sending their children to these camps. What type of mind control stuff are they doing nowadays? And I know that you know a little bit about this. I've talked to people that know a lot of that. They've talked a lot about these things, these new camps, these new ways that they do. It's kind of like MK Ultra upscaled, like the new type of MK Ultra. Are these the kind of things they're doing to these people? And I only ask because I have a really really good friend, one person that one of my best friends growing up, still me and my wife's best one of my best our best friends. She was in Hollywood. She did music for touring with all kinds of different bands, and her roommate was someone who is an heiress of one of these major companies in the world. And I'm not gonna give the name. My friend's still like scared to even look up, tell me the name. She had to like, type it in to show me. But this girl grew up. She has no knowledge of even how to buy forks. She walks around and basically has a handler that would takes her everywhere she goes. Her baby walks around, poops and pees in the floor, and the maid comes up, cleans behind it, and it's just like there's no concept of real life within her. Almost like she doesn't know how to live like a normal person. What is going on with these elites? Why are they doing this, and why do you think God is judging them?
Well, it is strange, and I won't go because it's too speculative. I have nothing to back it up other than hearsay, but that There was two whistleblowers that came out and said that the camp was evacuated. All those girls were evacuated about 5 or 6 hours before the flooding came. So there's even layers there that they can't be vetted. Okay. So don't even like it
Yeah.
can't be vetted, but that they were removed because they are being used for what the end game was of these girls. And then you need a cover story, right? You need a cover story for why all these kids are just gone and they can never be found and their and bodies will never be recovered and blah blah blah. Like they're just gone, just swept away. But there's always other things going on with these stuff. So that's 100% conjecture. No vetting of that. Just scrub it, but take it all with a grain of salt and an open hand. That there's possibilities and capabilities within the elite at levels we don't understand. But I know that you're pretty averse in your research in occultism and the mystery schools and stuff like that as well too. But we know that oftentimes within these different mystery schools and these higher level occultism, we're not talking about Church of Satan, low level, pathetic, or I don't want to slander these things that I don't fully understand because they do have power. But these lower level occultic practitioners, but the higher level occultic practitioners, oftentimes they are actually required and they are eager and they are willing participants to give up one or more of their children. That's part of the initiate based process for quote unquote leveling up
Hmm.
in these different societies to give greater access to Gnosticism and to secret mysteries and the secret hidden histories and to tap into different power levels. So there is that component as well too. So there's always multiple layers that are going on at the same time. Sometimes they intersect, sometimes they overlap, sometimes they're going this way and sometimes they're going that way. But there's just a lot going on with these things. And you know, we got people like us and the listeners here, we can't conceive of true wickedness. So that's why we're like, but why would you do that? Like, what do you mean you would send your child to a camp and then have them be like completely scrambled to be this tool for the elite for the rest of their lives? Like, who would do that? Who would do like we can't conceptualize that depth of scandalous, unfathomable wickedness and evil, and yet it is true. It's true because I've talked to people that have come out of that world. I'm sure you have as well too, John. It's so sensational that you don't even want to conceptualize it. And I know a lot of times people do want to hide their eyes and their ears from that reality because it's so wicked. But I always say, you know what? My God has to look on it every day, and His heart is broken for it. Why would I shield my eyes and my ears from it as well too? Like if I want to be unified with him in suffering so I can be unified with him in the glorification, well, then I should be tormented in my righteous soul by the lawless deeds I see and hear in the city day and night, as it says about Lot. Like you ought to be willing to enter into and be like, oh God. And then you would actually cry out for the return of Christ. Then you would actually cry out for the justice of God. Then you would actually be all about your Father's business and redeem the time for the days are evil. And you would go out and advance the gospel to save as many souls as you can because you actually understand just how when it says the whole world lies in the evil one, oh my goodness, most of us can't comprehend what that actually means. And then we wouldn't live for the world and for the flesh and for the pensions and for the retirements and for comfort and for convenience and all these other little pet doctrines and theologies that we want to live for. We would actually live for Christ if we knew and understood the depth of what humanity is up against every day. So um, I don't know why I'm going on that rant other than to say like it is way worse than what most people conceive of. And I know I didn't really answer your question about what they're necessarily doing with the technologies. I know that they have leveled up because of the advent of their understanding of neurology and I've already mentioned it a couple of times, but it's ELF waveform,
Hmm.
extremely low frequency. So it's big, broad waveforms of energies. They're not microwaves, they're actually longitudinal waves that they can alter neurology at levels that we don't understand. So as far as the what we would refer to as SRA, satanic ritualistic abuse, I'm sure that that still goes on at a very high level because they want to fracture the spirit and they want to offend God. That's why it's always children at all level. It's always about children. They want to offend God more than anything else. But now with their increased understanding of the genome and neurology and the physiology and the hormones and the blah 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 and all these different processes of the human brain. They're now able to do it with less of the hardcore satanic ritualistic abuse and more just straight up like, hey, I can fracture you and get DID, disassociated identity disorder in an afternoon rather than over the course of 10 years, right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense, man. There's a lot of tech out there. I was listening to Dr. Jack Cruz talking a little bit about some of that stuff, and it's crazy. But Jamie, I wish we had more time. We'll have to do this again. I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your information and sharing, your wisdom about God and different things along those lines. Let people know where they can find your content here on YouTube and any other things that you'd like to share with them. Anything you'd like to leave them with, please go ahead and do that.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm not a big social media guy. I should probably learn how to do some of that stuff. So I'm just on YouTube under Jamie Walden. And then my interviews there's interviews with me out there. Who knows where? Some of them are behind I don't even know. I just get invited on and do them and never see them again. But and then my website is omegadynamics.org. That's omegadynamics.org. And anybody can get a hold of me there and learn more about the ministry here.
Very good, man. Thank you guys. Subscribe, hit the like button, share this out with your friends, and let me know what you guys think about Jamie. Should we have him back? And I would be eager to hear what you guys have to say. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you guys did too. Thank you so much, and we'll see you again next time.